Hi, my name's Michael Crawford. I'm your training instructor for this demonstration. Today we're going to cover macros. So what I want to do is just go through the basics of how macros are created. Now don't be alarmed, this is not difficult stuff. We've created a template that has all the code behind it. All you have to do is place controls and link them to custom properties in your 3D models. And it's really simple to do, okay? So let's just find where the macro default template is kept, because we've created one for you and all you need to do is just modify it. So let's go there and get it. So if we go to our website, I've already got it set up, so steeldesignerpro.com, and because you're watching this training video, you've already got login credentials. So while you're logged in, log in to the website. Go to the help menu and go to the downloads page, and on the downloads page you've got Steel Designer Pro blank macro. Click on that and download it. Open up the file. So I'm just going to extract it. So I'll copy it from my desktop. I've already copied it before, so I'm just going to copy it to my desktop. Put it on my desktop, okay, and you'll see that I've already extracted it, and then I just extract it onto my desktop here into that folder, and this is the macro. So if you've got a 1 in front of yours, doesn't matter, mine does because I've done it before. So this macro here is a SolidWorks macro. If you go to your SolidWorks interface, I've created a project, a default project with a zone level assembly in it and nothing else at this stage. If you right mouse click somewhere up across the toolbar on the ribbon here, you'll see that there is inside here a toolbar which you can click on called macro, and that'll allow you to access that macro. But before we do that, we want to make sure that we've got something that we're going to drive with the macro first. Okay. Now macros can drive assemblies, they can drive parts. So that means that if I've got a zone level assembly, I can drive it, or if I've got a welded member assembly, I can drive it, or if I've got a connection assembly, I can drive it. If I have sections, plates, or vendor items, I can also drive them with the macro. Now the way this works is that we have to put this macro in with the file that we're going to modify and make the name of the file identical to what we're going to change. So this is how it's done. First thing, we're going to put something in here that we can drive with the macro. So in our parts toolbar, we grab the driving sketches. We can select a driving sketch, and you'll notice that with our basic default driving sketches, we've already got the custom properties added to drive things, but I'm going to show you how that's done as well. So I'm just going to insert this as an envelope, insert at the origin. All of our driving sketches should be inserted as an envelope, and I'm just going to insert at the origin, which is the basic place to put it. Okay, so now we've got a sketch component, which is our driving sketch. If we click on it and open it, you'll notice that inside of this component we have custom properties. If we change a custom property, 10,000 for that one, and hit rebuild, you'll notice that it changes the dimensions. Now these properties that are in here are actually linked to dimensions. If I change that back to say 4 meters and then hit rebuild, Control Q, that puts it back to where it was roughly. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to show you how to link a dimension to a custom property. And when that happens, it automatically puts an equation in place. Okay, these equations are automatically added. So it says, okay, well this custom property is equal to that dimension, or should I say that dimension is equal to that custom property. That's a better interpretation of it. So if I was to go in and edit this sketch and put in a sketch segment and add a dimension to it, I'm just going to make it 1200. I now have a dimension. That dimension can be driven by editing the file properties, and we can call it say beam location 1, and make it the same as 1200. Now that I've added that, if I go to my floor sketch and double click on it, it'll expose the dimensions. Don't edit the sketch when you do this. It's easier to double click, because if you do a double click, you're able to add file properties down the tree structure in assemblies and components in a multi-assembly setup. So if I've exposed it, then now I can double click on the dimension, and then while I've got the dimension open, I can go equals file properties, and now I can find in my file properties the beam location 1200. As soon as I click my tick, that dimension is now driven by my custom properties. I hit Control Q, Control S, go to my equations, manage my equations, and you can see now it's added beam location on D2 floor 1 sketch. That's now linked. So now if I go up and change my custom properties to say 2 meters, click OK, Control Q. Fairly simple really when you think about how easy that was. Okay, now what we want to do is we want to drive this driving sketch with an interface. And interfaces are quite easy to achieve, so let's do that. First step is we've downloaded the file for the macro. So I've just used SolidWorks. Here you can open up Windows Explorer. I'm just going to go to my downloads. I've got a few things here, so I'm just going to sort by date. There it is at the top. Now I should have unpacked this folder if I haven't done it. Now if I find it in here, I think I've already got this open, sorry. There it is there. If I right mouse click and go copy, this file is contained, and that's the file name at the top, within the zone assembly. There it is there, and I just paste it in here. So when I click on the component name and edit its renaming, I copy its name, Control C, and then go to the blank macro and rename it. So by doing that, it now links that macro to that part, which is our driving sketch. By linking it, you've just named it the same. Okay, so let's hit cancel. Now, we've turned on our macros toolbar, which we've spoken about before. You can edit a macro, new macro, record a macro, or run a macro. Because the macro has already been created for us, simply just edit the macro will do the trick. But let's just test the macro first before we edit the macro to make sure that it's going to work. If we right mouse click in a blank area, actually not right mouse clicking in a blank area, to modify this we need to be able to drive the custom properties in the assembly above. But for this particular purpose we have a tools bar. If you select the tools, then run macro, because this file already has a macro associated to it, it will run the macro. Okay, so this is just a basic interface. There's code behind it, and there's no information in here at all at this stage. So we hit cancel and get out of it. Now what we want to do is we want to edit this macro. So if you go up into the macro toolbar, select edit macro. Now the macro is in our folder that we've got, and then we click open. So this is the macro editor. The first thing I suggest you do is make sure you turn on your debug, because you just never know, you might change the code. So to actually to see your debug, you right mouse click up here and you click on edit. So it's actually the edit toolbar. The edit toolbar will allow you to comment things out while you're coding. Now if you're familiar with this, you know what I'm talking about. The next thing that I need to cover is to make sure that your immediate window is shown, which will do your debugging for you when you test. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is when the macro is fired, it runs the main. We need to make sure that main is the module that's in play, and the function that's inside main calls the user form. Okay, the user form, if we double click on it, is just a form that can be grabbed, dragged, stretched, played with, and this form will allow you to be able to put your controls on. Now controls are buttons, picture frame, text boxes, and labels. These two buttons down the bottom here, don't change them, don't modify them, leave them, okay, because they've got code wide behind them. If I was to double click on the exit button, That takes me to the code, and in this case you can see I'm hiding the form. You don't need to worry about the code behind. I'm just letting you know that the code behind is set up for you so that when you run the macro, it will do its job. Okay, let's get into the controls so that we can see what's actually going on here. We have a picture box which can be stretched. Okay, the settings for the picture box by default is so that it is stretched, so when we bring a picture in, it will stretch to its position. Okay, there's also a border around it. Okay, we will be taking the border away, so if you click on the border style and then go border none, but don't do that now, we're going to do that later because I want to bring the image in, and once we see the image then you can take the border away, because if we actually click on it now, it disappears. You don't even know where it is unless you select it. You know it's there, you've remembered that it's there. So we keep the border on it until we put an image in it. Okay, so now what we need to do is we need to create some images. So if I drop this, let's have a look at what equations are in place here. So we've got our floor base frame that can be driven by 2 dimensions. We have our floor sketch, which we've set up for a height to the first floor, and then our beam, and then we've got our second floor, which also has a height as well. If you go into the custom properties, you can see the different field names that are in play. Now we need to copy these field names into our user form so that we can reuse them. So I'm going to keep that open, and we're going to go through the process of linking the dimensions to custom to text boxes via field names. So if we go back to the macro interface, we will bring that over. Now, every time we click here, it's going to hide the macro interface, so I'm just going to drag that, unpin this, and bring this across so that we don't hide the interface behind it. So now I've got my 2 screens, now 2 parts to my 1 screen. Now if you've got dual screens, you don't need to go through this process. What we're going to do now is we're going to go through the process of grabbing the fields. So over here, if we click on the SolidWorks pane and then click on File, Properties, so that opens up the Properties box. So we've got the Properties box in front of us. This is our text boxes, and I'm going to build the text boxes first so we know what we're dealing with. So the first one we're going to go in here is we're going to go chord centers, change that by clicking on it and then swiping, and we're going to go width. The text box, which is going to contain our values, has to have the same name as the field name behind the TB underscore. So if we go width, so that's the same name, right? So we've got our text box and our label. Let's go down the side here, and I've pasted it twice. Okay, Control V and paste it again. So I'm copying, Control C, Control V, and then paste it again. How many have we got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so the next one, we're going to go length. Next one is TB, so capitals, underscore, and it's going to be length. The next one is going to be height. Click on the text box, height. The next one's going to be second floor height, so we could name these to second floor and first floor height. Second floor height. If it wraps, I've got a typo in there. If it wraps, because you can actually drag it out to, if it wraps and hides the text, you can drag out the labels box to expose it. And then the last one that is going to be here is our beam floor 1 location. Okay, so this is the one we added. If we go back up to height, we go first floor height, and that's that label. We need to make sure our labels are labeled correctly, so we've got height, and then next one, I'm just going to copy Control C and paste that into here, and then put 2 on the end. If you accidentally leave it the same and hit enter, it will tell you that you can't label the 2 the same. The next one is we're going to copy the beam location. So we can actually copy out of here and then paste it in here with a TB underscore and then paste. Sometimes pasting doesn't work. See, I'm hitting Control V. For some reason it doesn't. Go back, select it, Control C, and then Control V, and then paste it. So now we've set our variables that are going to come into play. If I hit OK, so that'll close the custom properties window. Now we can actually test it to make sure that it is going to fire and collect our custom properties and fill them into our interface. If we go up to the Run Sub User Form, click the play button, you can see the values have now come in. If we pull this over to the right and change, let's say, the length, and then the update button, which is this one, you can see now that automatically rebuilds the change. So what will happen is that as you make changes all the way through these text boxes and then click update, the macro will loop through all the text boxes and update the custom properties inside the model, and it will fire an update for you and a rebuild. So that's the basic interface to kick us off. Now what we need to do is we need to create some images. I've already done that, so I'm just going to run you through that process. So this is an image box, okay? The image box sits behind the text boxes. You can see that if I drag it in underneath, it hides. It's got a border on it. Its settings are, if I've said this before, transparent, and it's got a stretch setting on it, which allows the image to be stretched. So I've created some images of just by simply, turning it around, clicking on the grid, seeing the dimensions, taking a snippet, because I use the snippet tool, and then go new, and then saving the snippet as an image in my picture folder. If I go up and expand this right out, I can show you how that works. So now we're able to tie our pictures in. So I've clicked on picture, and you can see that I've created my basic images here for this setup. So if I click on that one there, that's our top plan. So there's our plan view. Put that up there, and we might move it. No, we don't want to move it straight over or all the way over. So now you'll notice that all of a sudden, because we've changed the image, the transparency has been lost. Okay, usually it's a Z order issue, so if you send it back, it doesn't work. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. It can be a bit fiddly. These ones here, if we right mouse click and we go bring to front, you'll see that that doesn't work either, but it's only worked on some. Interesting, isn't it? So what we need to do is just grab these values here and see if it'll allow us to bring forward. There we go. Sometimes you can't group the lot, sometimes you can. So that image now is able to be set in the back. It's still got the border on, so we're going to turn that off. So if you select the border style and change it to border style none, so there's no border, we can put the width. Whoops, if you accidentally stretch something, you can always undo. So that's a left mouse swipe, and then put the width, and then the length. We can select everything and move it up so that it's higher up, because we're going to get more of these on. I'm just going to grab those and move them over there. Hit the picture, Control C, Control V. You can see the Z order again. Doesn't work. Okay, so be mindful that that's happening. I'm going to change the picture to my, I can go where my beam dimension plan is, click OK, so there it is there. I need to stretch my image a little bit, because when I took this I was further away when I took the snapshot. So I'm just stretching it into shape. That'll do. Bring it down. My beam 1 allocation. Right mouse click, bring forward, send back. Yep, that's worked. So you see I just drag that over to see how it will go. Now we can put that up there. Drag these two boxes over here. I'm going to try and minimize the interface as much as possible, because your screen might not be able to take the size of it. Going to Control C that image and bring another one in. I've already done an elevation for that one as well. So now I'm going to go and change the bitmap for that to the elevation image that I've created. Stretch that up. That looks about right. Need to send it back. Pull it over here. Select those ones and go bring to front. Test. Nope, didn't go back. It's a bit funny in how it's not doing that. You might have to do each one individually, maybe. Looks like the group scenario might not work. Nope, still doesn't do it. Send to back. Try it again. No, we've got two working now. Okay, let's go bring to front. Look at that, bring to front. That still won't do it. Send to back. Anyway, this can be a bit fiddly, but once you get it, it works nicely. So we want to bring to front. There we go, we've got it now. Put that up the top so that that's our floor heights. So we've got our second floor height and we've got our first floor height like that. Bring our buttons by swiping them and bring them up so that they're within the same frame, and try and minimize this as much as possible. And of course you can, scale these so that they're a lot smaller as well, but be mindful if you do that your graphics may be distorted because we're using the image stretch process. So now if I hit Control S and save, I can close off the macro editor, expand my SolidWorks view, go into isometric view and just pull it to the left to show you how this works. If you've got two screens, it works much better. And now that I'm in this model, the macro will automatically run when I click on Tools, Run Macro, and here it is. So we've got ourselves a basic interface that will drive this model. Pretty cool. So if I wanted to, I could make my first beam floor, let's just make that really small. We can make a nice tall skinny column, 1 meter squared, with a beam centrally 500, and we'll keep the floor heights, let's just go 2 meters by 2 meters, and then we hit update, and now we've got a skinny little frame. So you can see how quick having that interface is being available to us. Can just go in there and change those values without having to go double click on dimensions and edit dimensions one after the other. We just go in and change the values. So one more thing that I've forgotten to do, and we should do it, and that is to name the form so we know what the form is driving. So we've got to go back to edit our macro. By default our macro is in the folder where it was. Go to our user form, click on the form header. If it's not already exposed, you'll see that it's got user form 1, and then in there's a caption. You want to change that to describe what your interface is doing. So we can call this driving sketch to floors, and you can see up the top left hand corner it now shows that. So we save it, close it off. Now we've got the macro set up for us to use. So we can open the part and run the macro, as you can see. And if you go up a level and there's no data in the level above, this macro will not work. So be mindful that it's in the level that you're currently at or below. So if I close the sketch off, I'm now in my welded member. If I go to, my zone, if I go to Tools, select the component, run the macro, it brings in the data associated to the macro at the below level, but nothing above. So it's important that you select the component and then run the macro. Now, if there is a macro that's at the zone level, all you do is just click off everything and make sure that you've got nothing selected, and then click Run Macro, and that will run the current open assembly. But whatever you select in the tree, if it has a macro associated to it, it will show the interface for it. So I'm just going to close this off now, and I'm going to just move this across so that you can see roughly where this is as we make the changes. We run the macro again. There's the macro, and then if we click on a dimension and change it and then go update, it should update, but if it doesn't, click it again. Okay, so sometimes you might have to click it twice to get that that rebuild happening. Now we can go through and we can test this thing to our heart's content, make sure that it's working okay. So we can go in and add a couple more dimensions, change its heights. Sorry, I didn't change that one. Make that a 3, 3, and then click update. And as I said, if it doesn't update, just click it again, and there we go. Obviously 100mm for my beam is a bit close, so I might change that, update, and then it moves it. Sometimes you might want to make changes at this level because you've got structural steel attached to your model. Let's see how that works. Click exit. Let's put some steel on this this frame. So if we go to welded members, columns, let's put some columns in place. Okay, let's put some beams in place. Top down, and we select the sketch that we're going to insert it on and the sketch that we're going to insert it on, and have it populate all our beams. Now this can be fully connected and automatically update because now we're able to drive that driving sketch using our interface, which is pretty cool when you think about what we can achieve with our little macro interfaces. So now if I go and put, let's just put a basic connection in here so that you can see how that works as well. So we'll just go end. Let's select an end connection. And because everything is parametrically contained and linked together, you will notice that when we make changes to the driving sketch above, everything automatically updates. So let's put our frame over to the side here. Now this is obviously a bolted frame. You can do welded frames as well, but at weldment level, whereas this is a welded frame. Sorry, a bolted frame. So let's just do this process. So you click on the tools, select the driving sketch, run VBA macro, and up comes the interface. It's popping up on my opposite screen. And now that if I make some changes, I can go say 5 meters. I want my floor beam to be 2 meters out. I want my width to be 5 meters. Floor levels, let's change those to say 2 meters and 4 meters. 4 meters, not 3. Hit update and hit again, and now we watch it rebuild. Isn't that pretty powerful? Including the connection moving across as well. So that's how our run macro process works. I wanted to show you that and how easy it is. So obviously if you don't select the connection, the component or the assembly that has a macro associated, it gives you a warning and says that there isn't any macro, so you must select something. So what can we do with this? Well, our basic macro interface allows you to just update custom properties. However, you can, if you've got some macro knowledge and some macro experience, you can add radial buttons, combo boxes as more controls to your interface, and that'll allow you to change other dimensions. Obviously, if we want to change sections and section sizes, we have to be pretty cluey about how we can tie our VBA code into the Steel Designer Pro's public class and DLL functionality and get access to those. But for now, this is just a basic interface. This is just so that you can drive things without having to go look down into components and change them. So what I'm going to show you next is how a set of stairs can be driven basically by an easy interface. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to drop in a driving sketch that I've created to allow me to insert stairs. Alternatively, I can go into the top level driving sketch and change the driving sketch that's currently here. I like to compartmentalize my driving sketches sometimes. It makes it a lot easier to work with. So if I go to Parts, Driving Sketch, you can see I've got different driving sketches. I have a driving sketch for setting up stairs. I'm going to insert it as an envelope, insert it at the origin. So you can see it's added my driving sketch for my stairs. If I float it, and I could have drawn one sketch and mated it to that sketch as well, but I've just inserted it at the origin, and I'm just going to mate this in place for now. So I've just offset that 1 meter. I'm going to make my top plane and my top plane coincident, and then I'm going to make my right plane and right plane coincident because it happens to reside on the right plane, and that locks it in place. Now you should always drag your driving sketches to the top of your tree so that they are below each other. So now I've got my stair guide, and I've also got my driving sketch, and I'm going to isolate the two of them. I'm going to edit my sketch on my stair guide, and by default I have these two values driving, and I'm going to attach it to the floor. I'm also going to drive my slope so that my slope complies. I might make it say 38 degrees. And now I have my stair sketch ready for me to insert my stairs. Go to my welded member, stairs, insert a stair. Stair says that this is the first, that's the second, and that's the third. It is a multi-attached model. Make sure you turn that on, and then hit my tick. So this is copying all the files from the library and inserting it into my project. Wait for it to adjust. Okay, so there's my stairs that have been applied. These are very basic stairs. They don't have any end connections for any of the stringers. However, my stairs has a macro behind it. So if I was to click on stair, go up to tools and go run macro, you'll see now I have my interface to drive my stairs. I can change the width of my stairs and then click update, and that changed the width of my stairs. I can change the minimum going and the maximum going. So going is the distance between the toes horizontally of your treads, and then we have rising, which is the minimum between the toes of your treads on the rise. And if we put in a minimum and maximum value, most countries have a requirement that you fit within those. We also have maximum number of treads, which is a variable that's been put into the stairs to let us know whether or not we've got more treads than what we can have, and you can compare them. We can also change the top floor thickness. So if you've got grating, or you might have checker plate, you can change that to 6 mil or a 10 mil or a 25 grade or a 32 grade. And when you do that, it adjusts the distance between the top of the floor and the top of the floor below, whether that be a concrete pad, and automatically calculates, due to equations inside the stairs, what the rise and run will be, and that's the distance between the toe of one tread and the toe of the next tread. If I was to make a change to my structure, okay, exit out. I'm going to change my structure, and I want to change the floor height of my structure. Select the driving sketch, run my macro, there it is, and I want to change this to, say, let's go 4 meters. That's really going to be quite large for the first floor. Click update, Click update again. And you can see the stairs have automatically updated. There's a lot more treads in there than 17. 17 in Australia is the maximum number of flights of stairs. The maximum number of treads. That means from the toe down to the floor. If we now select the stair and run the macro, you can see we are now well and truly 22 treads above the 17. So with our macro, we can add a calculation that comes up with a text box that says that this stair does not comply. You would need to know a little bit of VBA to be able to achieve that. Okay, so that pretty much concludes what you can do with VBA macros. Hopefully you've got a lot of information from what I've just shown you, and I appreciate your time. If you've got any questions, please contact us at support@cadcraftsman.com and we would be happy to help you. Thanks for your time. Goodbye.